everybody. Welcome to another Holistic Creative Chat. I am very excited today to welcome our guest, Robin Hallett. Robin is a healer, a teacher, and she is a self-declared awesome artist. I love that. That is so great. But what I feel when I look at what Robin brings into the world and the energy which she just, I don't know, just emanates, Robin, is that you are a messenger for love, for compassion, for kindness, for encouragement, ultimately for healing.
Yeah.
And it just comes out in everything you do. And I feel like joy is a huge driving force with all of that for you and helping others really feel that. So thank you for being here, and thank you for the work you do in the world.
Thank you too. I feel
Yeah.
like you hit it on the head. That's totally my inner mission. And thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Robin is one of our featured teachers this year for Spectrum 2016. She's bringing a wonderful little workshop called Healing Your Inner Child, which I know our creative community is going to love. So again, super excited to have you here. And I'm going to just jump right in with this question. I give this question in some form to everybody. That's my goal this year, to explore this. And basically, I'm just asking for people to share a story from a time or an instance in your life or your personal practice, and you can define that however you like, when the connection between creativity and healing was undeniable for you because you were living it and feeling it.
Yes. Well, I'm thinking of two, but one I'm telling in the spectrum lesson. So I'll go with this other piece that shortly after my mother passed away, I was just in a state of such shock and kind of abandonment. And it was really like the floor fell out from under me, and I had no idea what to do next. And I found, and then I'm an only child, and I was like stuck with clearing out her entire estate. And I had found a wall in her closet that she must have had a handyman make for her, a pegboard wall full of costume jewelry. And I don't know, somehow it came to me. I had never really been very creative. I'd always been crafty, even as a small kid, but I thought I want to make a piece, like a healing piece that I could wear out of these beads, And so I started cutting things up and feeling like I'm in so much trouble, Yeah, because you don't do that. Cutting buttons off of, like, I know, expensive jackets and blouses. And I started creating a piece for healing around that. And I would cry as I worked. I would be angry as I worked. I would pray as I worked. And it was kind of one of those happy accidents where you'd say, oh, this is helping me.
Mm-hmm.
And in the morning, suddenly I would wake up, or in the middle of the night, feeling a sense of purpose and feeling like the depression and the terror sometimes that was coming was eased by that. And I kept thinking, like, oh, it must have been like how the cavemen discovered fire, because I was like, oh, this is helping, it's like a miracle. Yeah. And I have a piece hanging here. I don't know, on the back of my lamp, there's a long necklace there. And that's another piece that I made out of, like, all her jewelry and her wedding ring and,
oh my goodness.
a timepiece. Yeah.
That is such a beautiful thing that you did. I love that you followed your intuition to do that. And you like acknowledged all the emotions that come up with it. And I'm sure a lot of that was wrapped up in it being your mother too,
Yeah.
And there's a little girl going in her closet and taking the things and making something else with it. And just how incredibly beautiful. And particularly, grief is such a personal and tender and process, and it is different for everybody. And there is no way any one person can sum it up for anybody else. And we all move through it differently. And I love that you channeled that energy. You, like, something in you, and I think of it as your creative spirit went, okay, these things, grab these things, arrange these things, do this work.
Yeah.
And through,
listening to that inner, getting still and listening, which is hard to do when you're so upset and there's this urge to, distract yourself with other things or check out. But I would listen to that impulse, and it was something was guiding me so clearly, like to make an offer and do. And it just seemed like really cool,
Oh,
spooky good, being guided on some journey.
and I love that. And another piece that I love about that too, Robin, is you did something that's almost counterintuitive. Like some people would have seen those things and gone, okay, so either now I pick the ones I keep and I get rid of the rest, or I give them to the family, or whatever, all the things we do. And something
Yeah,
in you went to this place where, quite frankly, was like a little bit of destruction of the pieces
right.
themselves in order to create something new. And
Yes.
that's such a powerful transformative piece in that
Yeah.
work.
Yeah, because you can't just be in that mode of like keep, sell. What do the clutter experts say? Keep, sell, or
Yeah.
donate.
Yeah.
No,
It's a whole
this
different thing.
is,
It's a whole different time. You're facing a whole different unknown point of your life in something
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Thank you
But I
for
love
sharing
the
that.
destruction piece too.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of it that way. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Very, very
Yeah,
powerful.
you're welcome. It's a
Mhm.
pleasure.
Okay, so something else I wanted to ask you. I'm trying to remember. I get these questions from things that you've shared, and I don't remember exactly where I pulled this from, but I do know. Well, it goes right in hand with this piece about what you do, which is to share the message of love and strengthen, to like focus on our strengths and compassion and kindness and encouragement and those sorts of things. But what I want to know from you, because you are such a wise woman in this area of healing, is so how do you work with the darker, the uncomfortable, the unhappy stuff without letting that become a place of dwelling?
Oh, that is such a passion topic of mine because I meet people. I mean, all of us know the experience of being in something for years and unable to move past it. And I think some of us have a longing to move past it. And for those of us who do, we're awake and the pain is a motivator. And there's some ability for each of us to see what we would like instead or have our eye. I sometimes call it the lighthouse. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
this wild pirate on a wild sea and it's stormy and it's dark, but somehow there's land
Mm-hmm.
and you're looking for a beacon. And that's usually, what you want instead of this, what the transformative story. And there's some way that we have to learn how to orient ourselves towards that and know that this is temporary if we want it to be, and begin to work it. So I think there's some knowing about what's over there, or at least there's really no there, I guess, but what we want instead. And you there's so much that has to transform through going in and being with, which
Mm-hmm.
is very different than suffering from or being at the hands of, right? So
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm writing a piece today about that whole
Hmm.
victim energy and just like how difficult it is when you're really really stuck in a place and you don't know how to get out,
Yeah.
you know
And I love that
yeah,
metaphor
so
you shared with the lighthouse too. And it's powerful in so many different ways, but even in
yeah,
just that simple idea of like, okay, I can't deny that I'm here in this storm and everything's rocking and I don't know if I'll make it there, but I know that that is there because I can see it and I
yeah,
can move toward it a little bit at a time as much as I'm able.
yeah.
And so what a very powerful metaphor that is.
Thank you.
For
I think
yeah.
it's cool too. I mean, that's the ultimate dark night of the soul, and
Yeah.
so many great stories about that. And just, we can't give up.
Yeah.
There's a spark within us, and it's there. So just
Absolutely.
waiting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the final question I had for you today was just about this is something important, and I ask people this from time to time because I'm always
Mhm.
interested in perspectives around this, particularly with people who we have our own creative practice. And
Yeah.
for some time, we've been navigating what it looks like to have our own creative practice and also to help others with the development of theirs or with the development of whatever it is they're working on in their life. So, how do you navigate, and what would you suggest to others about sharing about our healing moments, sharing about our ahas, and or giving space for that and determining when you're actually ready to do the sharing? What
Oh,
you
yeah. Yeah. So for people who share publicly, like you and I do, I think it's a really big to always be sitting with. And sometimes you find out the hard way that it wasn't the right time. And um, I for me anyway, I'll speak for myself. There are places that I have found that I wasn't ready to go, was afraid to share them publicly. And it was a really big discovery to say there's a private Robin and a private healing practice and a private journey. That was really big because I realized I had been excluding a whole portion of my history that really was ripe to be addressed because I didn't want to talk about it out loud with anyone. So that's one thing, is like you get to have your private self and your private space, and you have your public space. And I don't know, there's some real magic in this, but for a long time my creative space was in the dining room out in the open in our home. And it began to be a painful thing because my clients would walk past, even though I constructed sort of a wall with an IKEA open bookcase, people still were so curious and they would want to go in there and look at things. And even if I put a string there or rolled my desk chair like private, I understood, like, I'm ready to go do this work. So first is I had to create a little spot. And this is like our daughter's former bedroom. Once she went off to college, I moved everything up here. And so I think that's huge, is just knowing you get to keep some things for yourself. And it's very important. And no worries, because if you cross that line, you will find out one way or another. You'll feel like sad, or you betrayed something, or people will give you the weirdest kind of sympathy. And you realize they're talking to you in a way that's, wow, I didn't mean that. So I hope that makes sense.
It does, and you touch on a couple things that I think are kind of gold as far as considerations for keeping the sacredness of our own creative practice too. And one of them that is very much on my radar and comes up a lot, particularly with women, and exactly what you're talking about is environment. How very important environment and the space we're in is for healing and actually feeling uninhibited enough to be really working with our true creative spirit and energy and whatever that expression is.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I loved that you said is something that I don't know if anybody's brought this up before in our talks, but this is a really beautiful piece, is that there is something magnetic about people and creative spaces and people who work with creative energy, and people are drawn to it and they do want to know more. There is something, I think, inherently healing about it, and they sense that. They sense something different. And they, so whether they're creative themselves and they feel a kindredness or a validation, or they just feel a calling and they don't know why. So that piece, thank you for saying that out loud, because I think that's huge, and it's something to consider, because when we do have our stuff out, expect people to be curious.
Right.
And so have that determination. Is that a space that you're okay with whatever it is you're working on in the moment, or with your practice in general?
Yeah.
That is
nailed
gold.
it. And because it can be really hard then when people are in that space. And I imagine for artists who show their work and have showings, this would be such an important step to stop and take a walk through and say, how does it feel for the little one in here, the one who's just human and doing her own journey and it likes her privacy. It's like an inner container of the outer container. It's important.
Yeah.
Because, people feel invited in, they're drawn to that light, and they'll ask and they want to know. And then you're stuck with, that awareness of, now what? And usually we give of ourselves, we betray our own self rather than hurt someone else's feelings. So,
that was beautiful the way you put that. I just said that to another friend this morning, about the ways we betray ourselves, the conversation we were having.
Yeah.
And I also, what comes to mind, being an artist too, and like whatever creative practice we have, I think it's, different at different points in the process too. So like when I'm in process with a piece, it's really hard to put it to words, to describe it to someone else what was happening. I need that distance and that space and that life, that experience that happens in between when that piece was created and where I'm at now, in order to even really be able to dialogue about it with another. And so that becomes a piece to consider too. So maybe, it's, sometimes when we're in the process with something that we're creating or that we're working through, it is best to keep it close. And it goes
Yeah.
back to the initial point of that sharing piece, which is then save it for later for the sharing, when you've
Yep.
had time to process it and distance
Yeah.
yourself a bit.
And
Um,
I love the saying, keep it secret, keep it safe. And I think I got that from the show Heroes the first time around. And there was something about like these people recognized they had this inner ability and this something special. And if they opened that up and too many people knew, things would happen that were not good. Fear would come up but harm would come to the people. And I think so often when we're in a healing creative energy or we're just creating art, period, when people come in and begin to dance in this creative space with us, they're evaluating, they're commenting, it's starting to change the muse and the spark. And that's
yes.
something that I think kids learn really early when the parent comes in and says, wow, look at that, or oh,
Yes.
that's, so there's that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a whole different
Yeah.
dynamic. And sometimes it's a beautiful dynamic to like intentionally step into
Yep.
that group dynamic, or like
Yeah.
that kind of like parallel play with someone when you're like doing your thing and wrapping ideas together. That can be a
Yeah.
really powerful place too. But
Yep.
I think you really hit it on the head there, because it is about giving yourself that safe space. You said safety.
Yep.
And I think that's huge, particularly for the type of people that I imagine that you work with. And I know the type of people I work with. Safety is a
Yep.
huge piece in letting that creative voice out. And this conversation, I'm so glad we kind of just went there naturally, is so important in this world with so much social media and sharing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. You really
yeah.
have to consider that. I was just wondering about you as well, because I really have enjoyed watching all of your creative pieces and what you share, especially like on Instagram is where I know you through. And as I was thinking about the piece I chose to do for our Spectrum time, um, I intentionally picked something that I have very good about sharing, but also that made it a little bit, it's funny, like almost a little bit different to contact that part of myself because it was so okay. And I wondered if you ever run into that where you choose, because you teach a lot of courses and you have offerings, and how do you touch into a place that's real, still real and alive, but also healed to a point that your students can receive clear and they're not needing to caretake you and you're not feeling nervous and uncomfortable. I mean, it's such a fascinating thing, isn't it?
It is absolutely, and I love that. I have a lot of thoughts around that, and I feel like all of us that are in positions of teaching, we constantly are dancing with this and growing with it.
Yep.
And I come from
Yep.
a background of at one form, shape, or another of like talking circles and circle work. I
Mm,
literally grew up with a lot of that in my life. And so the dynamic for teaching in my mind is a bit different. Yes, of course, I have to have this role as a teacher and I get to organize and create a system for us to move through ideas together.
mhm.
But I also feel that it's kind of my responsibility to show you a very real portion of my process, particularly
Yes.
when I'm teaching creative practice and process.
Yes.
And I don't know what that's going to look like when I teach until
Yeah.
I'm doing it. And that's my best way to be as true and authentic as I can be at this point. And so, what I hope is that people don't, and I tell my students this, is that I'm not here to necessarily answer your big questions. I don't have a
Yeah.
formula for you. I'm here to show you, I'm here to present you with things to reflect upon yourself. I
Mhm.
trust that you have answers within you. I trust that if we share our wisdom together in safe space, that we'll all receive some medicine from one another
Yeah.
as we move forward. And and so that's kind of where I'm at in my teaching spectrum right
Yeah.
now with my
It's
approach.
beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Love that.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's a interesting place and in different and I've taught at community college and I've taught classes where I'm up in front of a classroom.
Ah.
It's a whole different
Oh.
thing,
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
So but then doing this creative work is really special. And I imagine with the work that you do, Robin, when you are um, mentoring, if that's the right word, but you do healing work with people,
Mhm.
that it's very much most people that I know that do healing work, and I believe you're somebody who has done work with Barbara Brennan too.
Yeah.
Yeah. in that school of thought, which is something I was aware of when I was a teenager as well. Like, oh, I loved her work when I was young, and
Oh man,
so
I love
huge
that.
piece, right? And
Yeah.
so, but what we understand intuitively once we are in that work and experiencing it is the reciprocity that happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, it's not flowing one way.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
both of us together. Yeah. Yes,
absolutely.
definitely.
Good stuff. All right, Robin. So, do you have anything that you would like to share with people? Any offerings coming up, or it could just simply be, of course, they can find you at your website, and I'll have a link for that too.
Yeah, I have I'm running a retreat in Portland. It's coming up super
Mm.
fast. So I'm not sure when we're airing this, but yeah, that's coming up, a women's healing circle. And then I always have some little goodies on my classes. And I'm interested in helping people wake up and heal and transcend, get to where they really want to be. And that means each of us, we all have obstacles on that journey. So, there's some nice things there to receive. But I'm pretty basic. I'm here to offer healing, and and that's my big
Yeah.
offering.
And I
Yeah.
feel too like if people do take the time to go visit your website, you have just so much there to offer
Yeah.
just in that visit, even in your classes, your workshops, your artwork is
Thank you.
so uplifting. I love it. So we'll
Thank
put a
you.
link to your space down below. And
Yeah.
thank you, Robin, for being here with us.
It's an honor. Thank
It
you
was
for asking me.
really wonderful. Yes. And thank you, everybody, for listening in.
Bye.